the past several weeks, Stories of Transformation has been providing you with the personal stories of advocates working against gender-based violence. As we come into the last week of Domestic Violence Awareness Month, we close out our Why I Am an Advocate series with two special stories on lessons learned. I am your host, Yvonne Ortiz. Our storytellers today remind us to take the lessons we learn close to our hearts and keep moving forward. Many of us, when asked not why we do this work, but for whom, can call up an image of that person in our mind's eye. We see them, we remember them, we carry them with us. This week, the inspiration for each of our storytellers has a name, a face, and a story of their own. First, we will hear from Kiesa Kay, a poet and playwright from Elizabethtown, Kentucky, and a nationally certified child forensic interviewer. Her story reflects on the relationship between compassion and resilience, and how, through our advocacy work, we can honor the ones we've loved and lost. Here's Kiesa.
Why am I an advocate? I'm a forensic interviewer. I talk to children and teens when they've witnessed violent crimes like murder and when allegations of abuse arise in their lives. The other day, a kid asked me, "Why do you do this?" So I thought for a minute. I like to know the truth, even if it's harsh, I said. And yet, there's more. More I didn't tell that kid. It's been a long journey. Along the way, I've been a crisis counselor, house manager of a domestic violence shelter, mother of two, a poet, a playwright, a traveler. You see, many years ago, my favorite aunt died a violent death. My friend, Daryl Preston, sat next to me, holding my hand until I finally could stand up and go to her funeral. Later, he spent hours upon hours holding me, listening, caring, and together we pondered why these terrible things happen and how could we share compassion? How could we build resilience in the world? He talked me into training as a crisis counselor, and nothing has been the same in my life since then. You see, this work really matters. Everything matters, Daryl'd say. Everything matters. He believed that each one of us has an obligation, a duty, to do our very best to end the suffering in our own hearts and in the hearts of others. At first, I did this work in memory of my Aunt Linda, and it strengthened me to think that even though I did not have the chance to be there for her, I could be there for others like her who struggled and hurt. Daryl worked beside me in the beginning. Years flew. Time flew. Daryl passed away earlier this year after a great career in journalism. Daryl taught me not only to look for the helpers in times of human tragedy, but to live my life as one of those helpers. Daryl taught me that we cannot reach into the past and change things, but we can take the lessons from the past and pass them forward, listening and caring about the feelings of others. My friend Daryl has left the earth, but he has left me that enduring legacy. And that's why I'm an advocate.
In this next story, Raven Dickerson, a social worker serving shelter housing as director of Artemis House in Herndon, Virginia, describes the image of the person who motivates her advocacy work, the last child. Inspired by Gandhi's last year philosophy that we must center our efforts for social transformation around the most marginalized and most oppressed, Raven strives to work for the child with the least access to resources. She reminds us that following this North Star, that working towards safety and justice for the person who comes last, lifts up all of us. Here's Raven.
On the first day of October 2016, I began my celebration of Domestic Violence Awareness Month at the Northern Virginia Pride Festival. Near the end of my shift at our resource table, a blended family stopped by to learn more about Artemis House services, and as we began to converse, I felt hopeful that I was speaking with the last child. At a membership meeting for the Virginia Sexual and Domestic Violence Action Alliance in September, a group of advocates invested in the anti-violence movement discussed our guiding light that brings hope to the movement. Though the process was difficult, this gathering of diverse people agreed that what gave us hope when the work made us weary is the shared idea that we have committed ourselves to creating safe spaces until the last child that has been victimized, silenced, and abused is able to live free of violence, oppression, and any injustice. The last child is seen and heard the least of us all, yet experiences the most marginalization and erasure. We call the last child our North Star, the guiding light that gives direction and illuminates a long, winding, trying road home to safety, representation, opportunity, and justice. 1 year later, I found joy in carrying the hope that I am working towards the day of the last child. The last child has been through all of the Artemis House staff meetings, domestic violence task force meetings, budget meetings, and meetings for the purpose of meeting. I see them take shape in our monthly review of data and program reports. I look for the last child in daily interactions with our community partners, my friends, loved ones, and even strangers. Do they know the last child? Have they seen them? This child reveals themselves in the gaps of our data, the conflict and resolution in each meeting, and in fellowship with others to remind me that there will be an end to our work. I follow the hope that the last child will soon come, not knowing if their skin is as brown as mine, or their hair as full and kinky as mine, or if their love is as clear as mine, and if their hips are as wide as mine. On that day at Pride, I was relieved to find hope in these children while discussing their experiences with violence and their love of Artemis, the goddess of fertility in the wilderness, protector of women and young children, the namesake of our shelter. Unknowingly, they shared a few truths of what the last child needs from those of us invested in this work. The last child needs a seat at the table. We call that inclusion. A voice in the dialogue. We aim for representation. A safe space for disclosure and expression, so we will model acceptance. And the last child needs unshakable support during their growth, so we are their advocates. The last child has endured a lot this year, and yet their hopeful arrival brings reminder that they need our investment in this anti-violence movement to be a daily lived experience, not a 9-to-5 commitment. They require that we challenge our privilege in safe spaces so that they too may be seen, may be heard, and may be safe. The last child expects that we see them coming and we speak of their arrival with conviction and with joy. I am an advocate because I expect to meet the last child, and until then, I announce that they soon come.
Kiesa and Raven have provided us a perfect way to close out this special podcast series on the importance, power, and lasting impression of advocates. Thank you for listening today. If you missed previous episodes of the I Am an Advocate series, you can find them on the media page of our website, NRCDV.org. There you can also access additional resources on gender-based violence and related topics. Stories of Transformation is an NRCDV radio podcast production brought to you by the National Resource Center on Domestic Violence. Support is provided by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, Administration for Children and Families, Family and Youth Services Bureau.